Thing to have that conversation in a vacuum and say, is Geno the guy? It's another conversation, I think, when you really look around the league and realize how many other teams are struggling to figure out their quarterback situation, and how many teams, would really like to have a quarterback like Geno. I mean, Las Vegas has a really tough quarterback situation. There's a lot of other teams that are really in a pretty bad quarterback situation that I think maybe would help put the Geno situation into some perspective, right, Curt?
Yeah, I think so, but I also think, again, teams hate when you say they're rebuilding. I mean, but the Seahawks genuinely are. And so you go, okay, where are we going to be 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Are we better off ripping off the Band-Aid and moving forward and getting young guys? And look, people have this whole fantasy about, hey, if we have the number one pick or if we have a top 10 quarterback, I mean, we've seen that doesn't always work out. Just because you draft a guy highly doesn't mean he's the right guy. But, a lot of people look at it, it gives you an opportunity, not only from a salary cap standpoint, from a youth standpoint. It gives guys a chance to kind of grow together. It gives you a chance to kind of mold a guy into the guy that you want, rather than just accepting the guy that you already inherited, which this coaching staff has done. And so I think that becomes a question as well. It's not just about right now or even next year. It's about the longer-term future, and where do you want to go with that position? Do you want to be in a position that 3 years from now, okay, we've just kind of muddled through and have to start all over again? And when you see some of these rookies play this way, I think, Brock can speak to this much more than I can, but rookies come into the NFL, it's still a hard transition, and it's never easy at quarterback. But they play so much football, you have a better sense of them, or you should, when you draft them than you used to. There's no or very little drafting a guy, letting him sit for 3 years. Like I guess Jordan Love was probably the last guy who'll do that. Rookies get forced to play right now because teams feel they know a lot more about them, but also because coaches only have 1 or 2 years and then they're on the hot seat. So I think if you're a coach who's a new coach in a situation, you don't want to wait 3 more years and go, okay, let's try and figure it out by then. I think you maybe want to make a move sooner than later. So I think that plays against Geno right now in this situation with the Seahawks in particular.
Okay, last thing here for you, Curt, and thanks so much for the time. As he mentioned there, and it's something we haven't even said that much because, frankly, we're too often so close to this, watching week to week, and this is why someone like you and your eyes and your experience and your more global picture is beneficial. I don't know if any of us in town have uttered, this is a rebuild. This is a rebuild. I think that 3-0 start kind of threw that, right out the same. Like, what do you mean rebuild? They're 3-0. They're right in this thing. So from your perspective, how and why do you kind of quantify or qualify this as a rebuilding year?
Because I think anytime you change head coaches, it's a rebuilding year, and you change the coaching staff. I mean, let's just be realistic about that. They're very, you rarely get a Tampa with Tom Brady and Bruce Arians steps aside so Todd Bowles can take over, but he's got a Super Bowl winning team. I mean, that doesn't happen in the NFL. When you change head coaches, it's because you haven't won. And you're looking for the new staff to come in and turn things around, which is rebuilding. You don't usually keep the same pieces you've got. They've got to get their players that fit their schemes on both sides of the football, their philosophy inside the building, the kind of guys they want. We love the word culture right now, but that's a big part of it. And that is what's going on, not just in Seattle, but every team that has a new coaching staff. You see Dan Quinn has kind of stepped into a situation in Washington. Well, he found the right quarterback. He found the right coordinator, and magic is happening there. I know they lost yesterday, but overall for this season, magic is happening there. But that doesn't happen a whole lot with a brand-new coaching staff. So I think 90% of the time when you make the move to a brand-new coaching staff, you may not say it publicly because you still got tickets to sell. You still got to have your fan base believe. But a change in coaching staff means you're rebuilding.
Have you framed this season yet in any of your pieces, Brady, and through those optics? Because I'll be honest, on our show, I don't think we really have sitting at 4 and 5. And rebuilding baseball is real. Rebuilding the NBA is real. I don't know if rebuilding college football in the NFL is nearly as real as it is in those other sports.
Yeah, the thing about a rebuild is there's a spectrum of rebuilds, and not all rebuilds are created equally. There's the extreme end of that is tear it down to the studs.
Detroit Lions 3 years ago, one win. And, yep.
Sell off everything, try to save as much cap space, accumulate as much draft capital as possible. Then there's more of the rebuild on the fly, which we've seen them do after the 2017 season. I would characterize this as more of a transition season. And you are, to Curt's point, I think you are rebuilding to some degree when you're installing new schemes and you're really realizing that you're having to rebuild sort of the foundation of your team, not so much personnel wise, but scheme wise. This is not a full.
Do you feel like watching this? And listening to Mike? And I'm sorry to cut you off.
Sure.
But do you feel like, because with that, and Kurt's second point to that is, hey man, when you change staffs, it's a rebuild, and when those staffs need players for their system, do you think that's what we're starting to feel with some of the 5 losses in 6 games? Is that maybe Mike and Grubb don't really have the kind of guys to fit what they really want to do?
Yeah, that could be. And we've talked about this before, where typically when a head coach takes a new job, you see him bring over not only several assistant coaches, but you see him bring over a couple players, both to help ease that transition in terms of the scheme and also the culture, to be sort of that messenger in terms of, between the coaching staff and the players. And they really didn't do that, at least with players. There's not a whole lot of guys, if any, that played for that have played for Mike Macdonald. You got a backup linebacker, and not really a whole lot else aside from that. So I think you just can't look at this as a full rebuild when you consider, okay, they made Leonard Williams, they re-signed Leonard Williams, made him the highest paid defensive player in franchise history this offseason, and he's 30 years old. You've re-signed other older players.
Typically, too, on that spectrum, it is GM and head coach and personnel department.
Yeah.
Right? A full-blown rebuild is going to include all of that. That didn't happen here. Right? They felt like they wanted to keep a lot of the culture and a lot of the personnel department and the general manager, and empowered, Johnny to do what he wants to do. And yeah.